from home, Sunday must be home, or maybe in some part of the world for work as well. Welcome again. This is our sustainability session. If you've been looking at, for the last year, this area within MEF, you probably know Gerrit already. Gerrit is a long-time supporter of MEF. Thank you. We already had delivered the cake.
Thank you.
And not only that, recently across the multiple topics you looked at, we've been looking at sustainability, which is part of a mission statement for MEF. So we're very happy that 20 years ago, that word was already built into our DNA. And now you're going to have two sessions. The first one is the two of us. So I will now shut up because you have a moderator. I'm really not introducing anymore.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, Dario. Like Dario started one of the earlier sessions with a bit of history, I think in 20 years a lot changed in our industry. And I think for the greater good, sustainability has been put on the agenda of a lot of companies, also of MEF members. And tomorrow evening we'll see during the MEFies the first Sustainability Award, which has been, I think, a great effort of the companies who entered for that award. And there we see that our industry is moving. Dario asked me, after hosting these sessions on sustainability online during the last year, to maybe write a white paper about sustainability. And that was all nice, but he phoned me whilst I was driving to my Christmas holiday. He just came back from his holiday,
I'm a nice
smartly
guy,
enough, in the middle of December. But when I was finally driving with my family towards our holiday destination for Christmas, Dario said, well, it would be great if you can deliver this paper for the next MEF sessions at Mobile World Congress. So that has been putting everything a little bit under pressure, a pressure cooker, to be honest, to really deliver something which has a bit of substance, where we put our name as MEF on it. And that comes also with disclaimer, because the sustainability paper, which I'll reveal a little bit in some slides, is, I would say, a kind of a short format of thousands of papers which were produced by the IPCC. Yeah? So the Intergovernmental Project for Climate Change has produced until now more than 17,000 pages about climate change. So if we still have some non-believers of climate change, fine. Maybe I can refer to those papers. But what we are aiming here is to provide a kind of a framework for MEF members. And some of the MEF members are small and medium-sized companies, even micro-sized companies, maybe one person or up to 10 persons, who might not have the access to smart people working on it, or trained people, or being trained themselves, or having a framework how to start. But by research we know that 70% of the emissions globally are coming from companies, enterprises. Yeah? And again, yet 70 to 80% of all the enterprise companies are small and medium enterprises. And these are millions of companies, and we have them as well. And some of the MEF members are also a member of the ITU or of the GSMA, that's all fine, and they have their working groups. Therefore, we thought with MEF we also will drive this project. So, I will now go to some slides to lead you briefly through this. Yeah, that's us. Climate guide. Just some pictures in more than thousands of words. The climate guide, you can find it online on the website of MEF, and if you are a member, you can download it. It's very easy in a PDF, so we'll keep updating it. And if you find anything which is maybe up for additional wording or changes, just let me know, and we'll work on that. So we constantly keep renewing it. Updating it, because data, of course, gets old. Yeah? It needs maybe be refreshed. But after all, we think that having this document can help you to get going. Why is it needed? So that's the first answer. CO2, carbon emissions are there. Yeah? They have been put in our atmosphere. But every day, year on year, we still are putting more CO2 in the atmosphere. Now, the atmosphere always sounds very big and large, but let's keep in mind, it's only 12 km. When you fly home, yeah, you're on the top of that, probably. Yeah? So if you drive on the highway for 5 minutes, already you have passed that cushion. Yeah? And that's a blanket where we keep on putting in more carbon dioxide. And that's a problem because the carbon dioxide will stay there for some 40% of it will stay there longer than 100 years. So year on year, and you can read this in the report, still we grow our emissions with about 5%. That's not good. And after our presentation, we'll have a new MEF member, Pandis, who will talk a lot about refurbishing and trading in handsets. It's a very important initiative in our industry. Why? Because we as a ICT industry have to of course reduce our own emissions. Some research say that about 2% of the global emissions come from the ITC sector. But we have the unique possibility as ICT sector to help other sectors reducing their emissions. Yeah? And that's calculated at about 20% of the total emissions by 2030 can be reduced, yeah, because of us. And we as MEF members can do a lot. Yeah? So that if we continue, we have the red color, and red is never good. Yeah? We in the management we always think that green is better. So at least we have to stay on a trajectory to not warm our planet more than 1.5 degrees. Yeah? So that is the target. Now, this is what I just mentioned. About 50 billion metric tons of CO2 are emitted annually on a global level. That is a lot. And there you see the percentage points which we can help reducing in metric tons. So that's not the 20%, that's in metric tons which we can reduce by helping as an ICT sector. In the report you also see a nice graph from the Organization for Economic Collaboration and Development, OECD. There are a lot of abbreviations when you go into let's say, the emissions and emission reductions, but what you clearly see, and this is the reason why we also should work on it, is that on one side, on the left side, you see that there are specific reasons why climate needs to be addressed on a strategic level within the companies. Yeah? It needs to be addressed because in the end, it will impact profit and loss, the balance sheet and the cash flow statement. Why? Because climate, I would say, events can impact your business, can impact your customers, but also the new policies will drive your company or can drive your company to be more active. Or it could be that your suppliers are demanding suddenly that you also will be compliant, yeah, in your reporting. So there are different, let's say, or even there can be people on the street in front of your office demonstrating. It can ruin your image. Yeah? So there are a lot of negative points why you have to stop working on it, but also there's an opportunity. There's also a positive side of it. It can drive your income if you have climate-friendly products. And therefore, in the end, we believe that the economic factors should be filtered in. Climate can impact your company, but as I mentioned, we have an opportunity, so it can also impact it positively. Yeah? Some nice tools are mentioned in the paper. You see here a tool from Normative, which you can use to calculate your own emissions. And also some low-hanging fruits, if you have a tree there. The blue ones are the easy ones selected where you can start with. So it's a kind of a practical guide. Just get going on this, setting your own solutions and then setting your, I would say, targets. Yeah? And having a target is good, but then you should embed it in your organization. What you see here is a graph from the Boston Consultancy Group together with INSEAD. They did research for the larger companies how climate is embedded within the organizations. And there are different ways to do that. And in the document you will read that you can embed it via one person, kind of a champion, but also you can have different stakeholders working in your company. Now, if you're an SME, typically you might not have a board. Maybe you have a shareholder, but you have no supervisory board. So then you can take the same setup within your own organization, in your own board, whereby different people in the organization will work on embedding the climate strategy. Yeah? So that can be, again, one person leading it as the champion. I'm always a bit against that concept because that person can take another job, yeah? And then you lose the whole momentum maybe. So embedding it maybe with different people in your organization, and there's some hints on that, what the CFO can do in digging out the invoices when it comes to the electricity bill or the gas bills. It can be the product director who can work on new products and services. It can be the HR director who helps to have incentives for maybe not driving home, taking public transport. So embedding it in the organization is key. Then when it comes finally in the report to the reporting, the Climate Hub is a tool which can be used by CDP, and there it is advised to just focus on 3 different modules of measuring at first. That's your first step. Just measure how much output you have, commit to a target, and then make an action plan. So that is the core modules to work on first, and thereafter you can then work on others. So that is a bit of a, I would say, a very brief snapshot on what we created, and I think it is there for you and it's there to grow. We have seen different sessions of different members who have been sharing their great projects. Earlier in this room we had Colt Telecom who explained very nicely what they did. We have seen Isabel about the Green Hub. So there's a lot of activities which are there already in the industry, and I think it would be good that we have, besides this climate guide, also a next guide with practical examples which can be duplicated because we are a global organization, and what works for you maybe here in Spain, or what works maybe in Europe, also can be transported to other regions in the world. So that is where we are today, and that's a really brief introduction, Dario.
Well, thank you, and if everybody been listening to the story, you've seen how one of my secret managerial skills or way of getting things done, call somebody on his way to his Christmas vacation in front of a family and say, please do it for industry, do it before MWC, and he said yes. Now, he used that against me later when he called me and said, unfortunately, it's all ready now, but you've got 24 hours to read the entire paper. And are you on holiday? I'm so sorry. I did it. So, okay, he learned. But the paper was really good. Still is. You can still download it. Unfortunately for me, it wasn't just good. I went through it. It just made me realize that MEF was the first company that is an SME and had to do that. And I hadn't done. I had not done on our measuring first steps. Did I measure? I was talking about it. So then the day after, I was doing a night, you received it in the end. The day after, I went and started that. The good news is, as we mentioned, if you're part of the ITU, if you're part of GSMA, there are schemes. And if you're a smaller SME as well, we're very happy to tell you that you can do it too. Download this report. It might help you. You have lots of tools there for starting and taking action. Now, and double thanks for Gerrit Jan. Becomes from Telenor, definitely not an SMEs in the world, but yet put his efforts in doing this. So thank you for putting that there. Oh, we have a question. Oh, it's a surprise question from Isabel. We were not waiting for that. Could you use a microphone there so they can hear from home as well?
Hello, hello.
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, it's not a question. it's an idea. Because as you know now, I like to act, and little actions make a big difference in the end. I have an idea for the MEF, because a lot of the sustainability or the carbon emission from our industry is the cloud. And everything we pump into the cloud, our emails, our pictures, everything, our files. And that's the first thing we can work on, actually. Clean the cloud from all our stuff that stays there for months and years and just requires more and more data center space. So I think it would be good maybe for the MEF to have a challenge for its members to clean their own cloud. And everyone at the MEF, me, you, we commit every day, we're going to erase 10 emails, 10 pictures we don't need. And every time we do, you could calculate it, and then after 2 months, say how much emission have we saved as a MEF organization. I think that's an easy thing to do, that if we all did that, it would make a huge difference into the carbon emission of data centers. So just an idea.
I like the challenge. I like challenges in general, so that sounds good. And I have a house for the challenges, which is probably a bit of an announcement, because I'd like to have a working group of some people that regularly meet, take their actions, check what we do, at least a MEF, if not outside. We have some great speakers in the past as well. I think we can already count. I remember Swisscom, if I'm not mistaken,
yep.
Vodafone. So we have plenty of great stories out there and great actions. They have done something. Let's put it together. I like that. And other members, I'm probably a spoiler for a working group, and we need time, is asking, how do I know which of my communication is more measure better in the scalability of green or net zero? Is it an SMS better than an email? How much should I use this and that? Because I'm creating spam sometimes, but I'm also, which is not good for users, but I'm also generating lots of waste of resources.
And just to know what impact it has. So when I send an email, it would be nice for me to know, okay, what impact does it have on the environment? And then I might think twice, or a message, or a silly message on WhatsApp, or it's good to know, and then you can then take informed action on it.
Yeah, what I think in general, if we think about changing behavior of people, the awareness, the step to awareness is, and create awareness is the most important thing. And I think, let's say, also within our companies, making people aware of what we do. And what you're referring to is that if we send each other a WhatsApp picture, it's so nice and quickly done. But it has to be stored there for 10 years. This is regulation. So we have to think also about that one. So before we send it, that indeed, why are we doing it? And you can say it's a small data, but in the end, small things have a big effect. And hence, again, the small steps we can make today, even we don't need a sustainability manager in our company. Yeah, we can walk up the stairs here to the next room. Yeah. Also, this venue has a kind of a climate stamp, so they recycle, they make sure they do things. So that's why we're also here. So small steps, if we all contribute, and it's amazing when you see in this report that about a quarter of our emissions, of our personal emissions, as we are sitting here, on average in Europe, we have about 10,000 kilos of CO2 which we produce by our transport, by our food, etc. Yeah? By our mobile phones. But also, there we can make a change. A quarter of the food we eat is because we eat meat. But hence, I don't say that we all need to be vegetarians, but we can be selective. If all of us would skip 1 day of meat per week in the beginning, and next year 2 days, this is a massive change of what we can make together. So this is, I think, my personal view on it, that yes, small steps make a big difference in the end.
Well, I'm not going to comment on diet and food because I'm not the right trade association. But on telecommunications, I can say that some of my members, I don't want to spoil because we're going to have something coming in, but looking at the comparison, they thought, that's my business. That's my new positioning. I can tell the world how my communication, let's say SMS, is much more efficient and better in delivering than anybody else. Why would anybody use an email instead? And that turned completely around the story. Not just about, oh, you need to change your life, let's be good. No, I need to make more money and be sensitive to the issues to the planet right now and to the issues that are close to my customers right now. That all of a sudden clicked in their mind, and that's one of the working group ideas that we have to talk about. As I said, this is the house of telecoms, and I'd like to talk about what we can do about it. Some people are seeing great potential for their competitive advantage as well. So why not using it, I say.
We have a question.
No, we have 3 minutes, Ben, not a
Three
question.
questions.
Chances for you to have questions, or we can talk about your thing. Should we take out all the food, all the downstairs? I have about 50 kilos of steaks coming. I'm worried.
What kind of role do you think that the industry can do in terms of educating? Because I really like your point that I don't know how much carbon my email emits or my Instagram account emits. So do you think there is some way in which technology or software could be developed, and that's something that the industry could kind of lead to actually help educate us, so that actually when I do that, I have a bit, because I think if I understood it, I'd probably be a bit more careful. In the same way as I completely agree with you, I understand the impact of my diet, therefore I don't eat meat. That's the change I've made. I still send emails though. I still use Instagram.
Yeah. The good thing is we have a speaker hereafter about, let's say, recycling, refurbishing handsets, because there's about 56 kilo CO2 from making one new device. Yeah. So longevity of devices is one thing, and recycling of our materials is another one. But I think on your note, what can we do to make people more aware of our behaviors? Yeah. A lot is done. Let's say Qualcomm is already now working on chipsets, which makes the laptops consuming less energy. Yeah? The network components for 5G, the masts are more environmental friendly, because they will burst only more when there's more demand, when there are more people in the area of the mast. So the networks become more efficient, the devices will become more efficient. So I think but that's the hardware side. But the soft factor ourselves, that is something which is maybe the most difficult last end to change as well. So we have to put it into the hands of the consumers, of our end customers, and communicate.
And I think there's a lot of value there. We'll come back to the last question, but partly because I would say I've changed my diet a bit as well. Maybe I wasn't as successful as realizing how much the single email was sending. And that, when I was told that, by the way, I realized that CCs for me should not exist anymore. And that's because I'm sure that if I CC you, you don't care. Tell me if you ever, do you miss any of my emails? Oh, you're breaking my heart. But yes, that's one of the things, how easily for me was to make that change. And sorry if and that was just a question. I'm sure I made so many of you happy meanwhile as well. But we had other questions. Yeah? Oh, sorry, we don't hear. If you can use the yes, please.
Yeah, that's better. Are the regulatory bodies aware the impact they have on enforcing greater time periods of being able to keep data in that cloud? Can they actually, if they're conscious of it, can they actually have a positive impact by reducing some of the requirements of keeping data for a certain period of time?
Do you want to? Maybe we as MEF have not talked about it. I know, for instance, that there are issues in the different countries where we worked on, and they're usually linked on safety and other issues, security, lawful interactions with agencies that might want to know 5 years from now what you have done and so on. Difficult to change, but not impossible. Not impossible. But I think what's even faster to change is our personal request some of these services. Do I want to have all of my pictures kept for the next 20 years? Will I ever be able to use them as they are? Because I cannot. How can I make sure that there's a clear up happening sometimes? How can that be? I think that's the kind of thing we right now could probably make a difference. But you're right. Maybe we should have a table with the regulators that we do have and say, why are you not looking at this? Why isn't that part of your agenda? I'm afraid our 3 minutes are running out, but we had a couple of minutes.
Yeah, we had one. Yeah, more too. Yeah.
Hello. Really, just on the recycling first, I went into a venture 4 years ago with Foxconn's recycling factory, the one in China where they recycle both the apples, a lot of the Android devices, etc. And I got a view of the volumes that were going through there. They were massive. And even through that massive organisation, it was a very, very low percentage of the ones that were being recycled and rebuilt in back rooms around the world. I mean, I was doing sort of tens of thousands of phones a week, yeah, and that was minuscule. They were all going into the insurance companies and whatever. There's a huge, huge black market in that, which I don't know how you're going to control.
Yeah, we'll see some figures hereafter. On that note, that percentage is growing rapidly for several reasons, mainly also because of the awareness. But interestingly enough, this summer Foxconn had to close its factory because the Yangtze River had too low water because of the hot temperature in China. So it's amazing how it even impacts themselves. Yeah, but that's a clear point. We had one more question in the end. Yeah.
Yeah, the question I had was how to make sustainability sustainable, because it can be very costly for a telco actually to be highly sustainable, and so there's probably, and I'd like to know what you think about it, there's probably a business case for finding the right way to be sustainable, looking at the right way to do it. Now there are some, let's say, other natural incentives like rising energy prices, which are also, forcing telco to rethink how they spend, on energy, and therefore how to limit, which has a positive impact on sustainability. But there is probably also a question around the business case, how to make it viable for telco, where to start, how to do it, etc.
Yeah, I know that Vodafone, for the whole network, they are already running on sustainable, let's say, green energy, but they had to pay over the last year 1 billion extra. Why? Because they leveled energy pricing. So was that filtered in the business case? No, it's not. So natural disasters, supply chain problems, economical problems are feeding into that business case. But in the end, we have to be flexible. We have to think forward. So how sustainable is sustainability? Sometimes it's not, but we have to go there and we have to do it. Maybe we have to reverse the question, what would happen if we would not be sustainable? Yeah? What is the cost of not being sustainable? Which can be a negative point as well. Yeah.
And I would say it's an interesting question, how to manage it. At the same time, talking about the easy pick, or maybe not so easy, but evaluations is, how much electricity do telcos use? We've seen it last year. When the price of electricity went through the roof, it was painful, very painful. And efficiency all of a sudden has become much more important. I made a little prediction, I think it was last year, that said that at MWC this year we were going to talk about much more on the vendor side about energy efficiencies, because it took a lot for them to, and some of it is marketing, and some of it is real. It's real business, because it cost and it was really painful to sustain for some of the big telcos out there. So that's a part of a good sustainability that should be here for future as well. But not everything is gold, as you say. I do agree with that. I'm going to be kicked out of this table because more interesting people need to come here. But thanks for having me again. But thanks here. I'm just representing the interest of our 197 members. Just good news. One more just arrived. And on the topic. And thanks for Gerrit Jan for managing and working in a working group. If you're a member, join us. Let's discuss this. Let's make those much more approachable, usable, and actually a challenge for all of us to do more of this.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.